Hey everyone, thank you for joining in. Tonight we're talking about Thanksgiving. I know it's oh man, this year it's a loaded word, right? All of the norms and holidays. So we have some tips to deal with that, but also just general Thanksgiving chat and some Q&A. So think about where you struggle at Thanksgiving, whether you're a guest or a host or have food restrictions or not, just what are the highlights and the struggles of Thanksgiving. We're going to talk about all of that today. And okay, thanks guys for joining in. We're just getting started. So first thing that we want to talk about in regards to Thanksgiving is what happens when you have any sort of dietary restrictions. Now, that could be just personal preference, like say you really hate turkey. That's fine. Or you're vegetarian or vegan. Holiday centered around a giant turkey can be a challenge. But what if you can't have garlic or other foods in that family? Or what if you're on a low FODMAP diet or a gluten-free diet or whatever it may be? How do you navigate that? And so as a guest, there are a couple things you can do, and I'm going to look at my notes here because I did prep for this. I want to make sure you guys got all of the tips tonight. So as a guest, the easiest thing you can do is talk to the host. I know that sounds small, and I'm not trying to trivialize it. I know there are all sorts of situations for the holidays where maybe you don't really know the host, or it's new in-laws, or it's your great grandma's recipe that's been handed down generation to generation, and that's just what it is, right? You show up and you eat. So I do not mean to trivialize it. I know just talking to the host can be hard, but if you can, you should just bring it up. And there are a couple of things you can do. One is know that it's a burden to them, right? They're already preparing a big feast for however many people. So acknowledge that and do what you can to make it easy for them. You can provide some recipes that might work with your diet that you know would go with the Thanksgiving spread. You can give them your list of safe ingredients and ingredients to stay away from. You can tell them some different brands of things to buy, like say there's a certain a certain brand of butter or a certain brand of mayo or mustard or something that may be common in some of their recipes, but you have found one that works for you. That's a simple substitution for them to just buy a different brand, and then you can eat it, right? So that's an easy thing to do that's not too much of a burden for the host. Another thing that you can do is offer to bring something to share, and then that's a dish that you know you can eat, and then you just supplement what you can. Say maybe you can have whatever you bring to share, and you know you can have the mashed potatoes or the green beans or the sweet potato casserole or something else. So think about what you bring in the context of what you know you can eat. You can also ask the host, you just have a conversation about what your restrictions are and see what is it that you might be able to eat so that you can prepare yourself accordingly, right? So maybe you can only eat side dishes and you can't really do any of their main heartier foods. That's fine. Bring some snacks with you or eat beforehand. We'll get back to the snacks though. So there are ways to make it work that are not too burdensome for the host, but still allow you as the guest to bring it up and have that conversation. Worst comes to worst, and I know this is hard in a lot of ways, but you can also just bring your own food, right? Like if you make it clear to the host that you don't mean to be insulting their cooking or their feelings or anything like that. It's just like, hey, I don't want to be a burden to you. I appreciate you hosting us and putting all this together, and it smells amazing, but I really need to not feel sick or be physically ill the next day or many days after that. And most people will respect that. I understand having the conversations with people who don't understand IBS or the complications with food restrictions. That can be really hard, and I don't mean to trivialize that either. Having anybody in your family that supports you and understands back you up on that can be really helpful. having multiple people express that it's important. But when it comes down to it, remember, you're the one who has to live in your body, and you have to feel however that is. So, if that means bringing your own meal, then do that, and you will definitely feel better the next day. And let's see, Carl Williams says, bringing a dish is a great way to contribute. Exactly. So, and it's fun too, because then you get to try different things, right? Like if you go, I don't know about you, but for my family, we kind of do the same things year after year after year, and it's fun, and those are special dishes, and I don't want them to change. But I also know that there are changing needs. Like my grandpa cannot have any sort of peppers, like black pepper, cayenne pepper. It doesn't go well with him. And so when I cook, there's no pepper in anything, because I want him to be able to eat it and enjoy it. But alternatively, I could just not put pepper in some things. So this is a great segue to the second part I wanted to talk about, is what happens if you're hosting and you want to be courteous and bring this up to your guests. What do you do? How do you talk to them about it? And again, you're already doing so much and preparing so much food. How do you make it easier for you and your guests, right? So with the pepper example, so say it's the mashed potatoes, right? So just put the pepper in at the very end. You mash them, you get the consistency right where you want it, you have all the other seasonings, and then you stir in the pepper. And obviously if you mash it a bit, it helps. So maybe right before it's the perfect consistency, separate out some with no pepper, and then add the black pepper to the rest and keep mashing, right? Same with garlic. Say somebody can't have garlic in your family and you want to put garlic in your mashed potatoes. It's the same thing. And so then what you can do is you can have a small portion set aside for them, and then you can have the portion for the whole table. And it's not really extra work. It's just remembering to take out a couple scoops, put it in a bowl, and call it a day, right? It's like put a piece of foil or something over it, keep it warm, set it aside, reheat it, whatever you got to do. I guarantee you that person's going to appreciate having something they can eat that is not going to make them feel sick. I promise. Nobody ever gets upset about not being sick, right? So same thing goes with nut allergies and things. I have a couple examples I can give you guys in a minute, but I want to talk about a couple other pieces when you are the host. So another thing to remember is that you don't have to make everything so that everybody can eat it. You just want to make sure everybody can eat something or have a decent meal and enjoy the holidays and the festivities and the company, right? So if you don't have to worry about making your guests feel ill, and they don't have to worry about eating something that will make them feel ill, but everybody eats enough that they can, have the sustenance, but enjoy the holiday and the feast and the atmosphere. Like, that's the important part. So say you have one guest who is vegan and one guest who's gluten-free and one guest can't have onions. That's fine. Great. So step one, if your guest is vegan, maybe figure out what you're going to offer as an alternative for them so that they have some protein or enough food to eat that's not like, I don't know, green beans or a salad or something, right? Depending on what's on your table. So make sure that they have an option, and it could be that they bring that option and they supplement with sides. Like if you don't want to cook a Hasselback butternut squash or make lentil stuffed squash or whatever it may be, that's fine. Just ask them to bring that and say, but the sweet potato casserole is going to be vegan and the green beans will be vegan, and I'll make vegan cornbread for you. Great, perfect. And you know what, that vegan cornbread, if you use rice flour instead of wheat flour, in addition to the cornmeal, hey, now all of a sudden it's also gluten-free. So there you go. So that's an easy option. And then you make a couple things that are gluten-free. Maybe it's you have some vanilla ice cream for dessert instead of the pie, and other people can have pie a la mode. You have the mashed potatoes are gluten-free. Again, maybe the green beans are gluten-free. The turkey's gluten-free. So you can do things like that where maybe they're not all eating the exact same meal in all the dishes, but that's okay. Everybody's eating, and it makes it easier for you as the host. So that is another tip. Also, when you're talking to your guests who might have food restrictions, or dietary needs, ask them for specific brands. They eat all the time. They'll tell you, right? You can ask them for recipes, you can ask them for suggestions. And one really important thing is to ask them about cross-contamination, how sensitive their system is for, whatever their dietary need is, and how careful do you need to be? Because the worst thing is when the host goes through so much effort and the guests still don't feel well, right? So that's like the worst case, because everybody's really trying and it didn't work, right? So ask them about cross-contamination and ask them about where sneaky ingredients hide. Like if they have issues with fructose, ask them what other labels or words could it be under? Like, what do you need to pay attention to when you're reading the ingredients label? How do you make sure that there isn't something that sneaks in there, right? So that your efforts are successful and everybody has a nice evening. And the other thing you can do is encourage guests to bring their own, right? Like, so back to the example, if one of your guests is vegan and gluten-free and somebody else can't have onions, right? Like, just ask them to bring something. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm sure they will be happy to bring something so that they can eat. It's simple. So don't be afraid to do that. And then also, as the host, we have a great service here at ETP where we will do a one-off conversation with you. You don't have to sign up for a whole food coaching program, but just tell us what you're dealing with in terms of the dietary restrictions and needs for your guests for Thanksgiving, and we'll come up with some ideas with you. We'll help adjust your recipes. We'll give you some ideas to make it really simple and streamlined so you're not cooking a million different new things. We can give you some new recipe suggestions and really just be really practical. I mean, I've cooked Thanksgiving so many times myself. I know how insane it can get, especially if you're doing it all on your own. So we want to make it easy for you and make it so that your guests feel good about what they're eating and afterwards as well. So reach out to us if you're interested in that. We have some discounts and stuff going on this week because it is 2020 and who doesn't need an extra helping hand in any way that you can give or get it. So we are taking care of you guys. Just reach out via DM or an email at contact@eachtreatsandparsnips.com and we can set that up for you. So getting back to the more specifics though about how do you adjust some of those recipes. So I mentioned, nuts earlier. So what you could do, say if you have a sweet potato casserole recipe that has some pecans on it, which I know is really good, but not everybody can have pecans, which is just a fact. It's unfortunate for a lot of reasons, but it's how it goes. So what you can do without having to completely scrub it and eat something different or have everyone have to deal with not having nuts on it, you can either put nuts on half of it, or you can, again, like the black pepper and the mashed potatoes, just take some, when you're making it all, assemble part of it in a smaller casserole dish and don't put nuts on it so that that person has their own portion, their own serving, and then they're fine, right? And who doesn't like having their own little thing come out of the oven? So that's always a nice option and they'll feel good about it. Another issue, I know a lot of people are lactose intolerant, right? So there are so many different lactose-free milk brands out there. So if you're making your mashed potatoes, just grab some lactose-free milk when you're at the store and use that instead of regular milk. I promise it tastes the same. It may taste just a tiny bit sweeter. You're not going to notice when it's in the mashed potatoes. And the extra sweetness is nothing crazy. It's simply because the sugars that the lactose turns into when they treat it with the lactase enzyme, your taste buds just taste those a little bit sweeter than they do the natural lactose that's in milk. That's all that's happening. So it's just regular milk. So you can do that. They even make lactose-free half and half now. I haven't seen lactose-free heavy cream, but maybe it's out there in some countries or some stores, so you could look for that. Butter is naturally very low in lactose, but for those who are extremely sensitive to it, you can consider using ghee instead, which has no lactose. Just be careful because the fat content of ghee is higher than of butter, so You can just straight up substitute. You'll just have a little bit more fattiness, maybe a little more greasiness to whatever it is, or do about 2/3 the amount of butter of ghee. So if it called for 1 cup of butter, do 2/3 cups of ghee, and then add some milk or some water for the other portion of that. And then last suggestion about specific recipes and substitutions are to keep a couple side dishes, at least like 1 or 2 of them, relatively simple in terms of the spicing and seasoning. Because even if somebody doesn't call you and say, hey, I can't have garlic and black pepper, they still may appreciate having something without garlic and black pepper, right? So what you can do is have 1 or 2 dishes that are just salt and pepper, or a dish that's just herbs and whatever it is. That way, even if they're shy about having the conversation with you, or it's just been too much in 2020, you're still giving an option, and you're still reducing the amount of stuff that they're going to eat that isn't good for them, right? So that brings us to the next segment, which is how to feel well the next day. So regardless of if you have dietary needs or not, let's face it, we all probably eat a little bit too much or a lot too much on Thanksgiving. It's hard not to, right? It all smells so good, and it's grandma's cooking, or mom's cooking, or dad's cooking, grandpa's cooking, whoever, that just makes everything so delicious, and they put all that love and care in it, and you're just in a good mood, and you're surrounded by family, and we just eat, right? That's how it goes. And so how do you feel good the next day, right? So there are a couple things. One is to stay relaxed. I know for some of us that's easier than others, depending on the circumstances of your family, or the holidays, or 2020, or food in general. I get it. It's hard. But do what you can, because staying relaxed is going to help your digestion. It's going to keep you feeling good. So that is step 1. So then the next thing you want to do is see what's in the dishes. If you have any sort of food restrictions or dietary needs you need to be considerate of, just ask the host or whoever made it. Just, casually, talk to them about food. If they spent all that time cooking, I'm sure they do not mind telling you what's in it, right? So just ask. And then just eat small portions if there's stuff that you shouldn't eat, or eat more of what you can eat. Also, as a host, if you save containers that are empty or that you used, say you put margarine in something, just save the container, because if somebody asks and wants to know what's in it, you can say, oh, I put some of this and some of this, and you can just hand them the containers and they can look at it and then make their own choices about what is safe. So that's a really simple, easy thing that's just means don't throw it in the trash, right? Just give them a chance to look at it. Excuse me. Okay, so back to tips for how to feel well the next day. If you are somebody who's like me and you need to eat pretty frequently, going to somebody's house for Thanksgiving can be a little hard depending on what the snack situation is, right? If you're expected to have a big appetite for this big meal and you haven't eaten all day, that's not really gonna work. Some of us need to eat more often to keep our systems feeling good. So bring snacks to share. Other people will be hungry. They don't mind. Just make sure that you bring something that's safe for you to eat. And then remember to hydrate. That is really important. No matter what day it is, we generally tend to be dehydrated. So remember to hydrate. Bring your water bottle with you. Ask for a water when you get there. If you are going to be enjoying some alcoholic beverages, if you're on the low FODMAP diet, remember to check what you should and shouldn't be consuming beforehand. The blog A Little Bit Yummy has a great list with some more details on it, but just really high level generically, one beer or one glass of wine for most wines should be okay on the low FODMAP diet, and then anything with gin, vodka, or whiskey, as long as you have a low FODMAP mixer, should be okay if you just have one drink. So again, that's A Little Bit Yummy has a great resource on that, and also some nice cocktail recipes that you can check out that are low FODMAP. But remember, alcohol is a gut irritant, so you don't want to overdo it for several reasons, but if you're really trying to be nice to your system and give your GI system a chance to enjoy the evening too, don't drink too much, right? And then the last tip there is to don't overeat. I know that's so hard to do, especially if it's, your favorite foods and your favorite person made it, and what are you gonna do, right? But remember, there's this wonderful thing called leftovers, and Thanksgiving has the best leftovers. So you don't have to eat everything in one day. You can eat some and then, hey, mix it up and have a different meal the next day, right? Maybe you had green beans and mashed potatoes and turkey and cornbread. Great. Next day you have turkey and what else? More turkey. Maybe a salad and sweet potato casserole. Or then you have rolls and turkey and mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce, right? So you can mix it up, and if you have to eat it all the time, that's just too much. So take it, enjoy it, savor it for what it is, and then enjoy your leftovers. Okay, so I promised you guys a special Thanksgiving edition set of recipes too for this, so get ready. I will post this later, but the URL is eatstreatsandparsnips.com/Thanksgiving, because that's what holiday we're talking about. So again, that's eatstreatsandparsnips.com/Thanksgiving. If you go there, there are 4 salad recipes, 3 soup recipes, 6 main dish recipes, including 3 vegetarian options, 7 side dishes, and 3 desserts. So from that, pick and choose, make some additions to your new 2020 holiday menu. Be considerate of your guests. Make one of those dishes to take to share. So many options, and we have plenty of options on the website too if you just want to scroll through. But those are ones that are really great for the holidays. So recommend checking that out. And then finally, I wanted to get to a Q&A. So if you guys have any questions about Thanksgiving, type them in the chat box below and we'll answer them. But we did have 2 questions that were sent in earlier this week. So the first one, while you guys are typing, is how to make cleanup easier. So I know when you cook, right? So the dishes pile sky high. So here's what you do. First step, this is going to sound really silly, but it's very important. Start with a clean kitchen, right? And by clean kitchen, I mean empty sink and empty dishwasher, because you need room to put all this stuff, right? You're going to make it dirty. It's going to make great food, but then you have to clean it. Also, if you write out a cooking plan ahead of time to whatever level of detail you want, you'll know where your downtime is, where you can then do some dishes, right? And you can socialize, chat with the fam while you do that, but maybe even enlist some help. That's a way to go, right? So you can do some as you go, and then if you don't have an issue with cross-contamination for any of your guests, or if you do, be careful with this, you can rinse and reuse, right? Like you're using it all for the same meal. You don't have to scrub it clean. If you're, getting out the butter to make the mashed potatoes, great. You can get a little bit more out later to saute the green beans or whatever it may be, right? So be conservative with your utensils is what I'm trying to say. And then the final suggestion on that one is to make sure you soak the dishes that are still dirty while you're eating to make it easier to clean them up later. All right, so we have some questions from the audience. So Carl Williams asked, how do we downsize recipes? That is a really good one, especially this year with smaller gatherings. Yes. So the biggest question, being a turkey-centered holiday, turkeys only come in large, extra large, and really, really large, right? There's not really a small size turkey. So what I recommend doing is getting turkey cutlets. They're pretty much like a chicken breast, but turkey. And you can get them in thinner slices. You can get them with a bone in if you have a larger gathering, maybe like 4 to 6 people, something like that. But if it's like 2 or 3 people, you can get thinner sliced turkey cutlets, which are really great. And we have a couple recipes that are on the Thanksgiving website I just gave you for those. You spice them up really nice, marinate them overnight, cook them in the oven or stovetop. They're really, really, really good. You almost will not want to go back to a whole turkey. Other recipes to downsize, excuse me. What you can do is do a quick calculation. Say you want to do like a sweet potato casserole. Shrink the pan, right? If your pan's half the size of a 9x13 or something, great. Or do it in a smaller, like 2-cup Pyrex if it's like just you and you really love sweet potato casserole. Like do it in a 2-cup Pyrex instead of a 9x13 or an 8x8 or whatever. So there are options. And then a lot of recipe pages have a serving size adjustment that you can use. The ETP recipe catalog also has that adjustment, so you can do that pretty easily. And if you have any questions about it, just shoot a message over to ETP and we will help you. So let me see. Next question from the audience. We have from About the Journey, with diabetic family members, sugar substitutes that are safe to use. So, that is a good one and a tough one. So, generally for diabetics, you want to keep the sugar as low as possible. You also want to keep the simple carbohydrates as low as possible and fruit as low as possible. But for the most part, Thanksgiving is not a holiday about fruit, so lucky there. So you want to add, if you had to use a sugar, I think maple syrup is one of your safer options. Or you could use stevia perhaps. There are a couple other ones that aren't as well explored, so I would be careful with those. But you want to keep just generically sugar of any sort as low as possible. So the desserts on the ETP Thanksgiving page are all relatively low in sugar, and we have a lot of low sugar recipes on the website. You can actually filter by that, so check those out. And let me think other. So apparently I'm craving sweet potato casserole tonight, but if you do a sweet potato casserole, you could have a portion set aside for them that has less sugar or no sugar. And if you let the sweet potato roast longer, it brings out more of the natural sugars in it, so you don't have to add as much sugar to get that nice flavor to come through. So those are a couple tips you can do for keeping the sugar down for the diabetic family members. And if you guys have any other questions, throw them in the chat. We have one more that was asked earlier this week, and that is how to avoid awkward table conversations. So after all the things that have happened this year, I think that is a very, very real question and fair to discuss. So 2 strategies for you. The first is have something that you want to talk about, because if you're excited, people will follow you into conversation. They want to know. They may try to steer it somewhere else, but just have things that you're excited about in life that you want to share with your family, because they want to know. I mean, they want to tell you about their stuff too, but at least it'll minimize how much of that you have to endure. And then the other one is have an exit strategy for conversations are just going way out of where you want to go, right? So either have a wingman. I know that sounds silly, but like it's real, right? be it your brother, your kid, your spouse, whatever. Have them there. Make sure they know what your hot buttons are that you want to avoid this year. And they can come and swoop you to, hey dad, can you check out this thing I just made? Or can you help me like make my plate of food? Or worst case scenario, most people have a dog, a cat, something like, I gotta go check on the dog. I thought I heard something, like just bail, or is that my phone ringing in the other room? It's a great reason to actually leave your phone in the other room, enjoy your family, and then if you need a minute, just go check it, right? So I hope this has been helpful. Remember, guys, that link for those recipes is eatstreatsandparsnips.com/Thanksgiving. If you are a host or making a dish to bring to your Thanksgiving gathering and have questions about food restrictions or dietary needs, how to accommodate, reach out to us at contact@eatstreatsandparsnips.com or send us a DM and we will set something up for you with our food coach. We have discounts, as I said, because 2020 is rough and it's Thanksgiving, right? So reach out. We will help. If you need to convert some recipes to downsize this year, let us know. We can help with that too. And everyone, please stay safe. Keep your family safe, your neighbors safe, your grandma safe, your grandpa safe. Everybody stay very, very safe and have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Have a good night.